Grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life features stories to inspire and motivate you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. Visit cyacyl.com.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in. Anxiety is one of the most common mental health challenges in the United States. More than 50 million people have been diagnosed with anxiety disorders, and countless others struggle with low self-esteem, isolation, insomnia, and other debilitating effects of anxiety. Imagine what your life would be like if you could break through fear and anxiety and access your inner power. Today's guest, Dr. Friedemann Schaub, helps people move beyond fear and anxiety so they can tap into their true potential to heal, change, and succeed. His new book, The Fear and Anxiety Solution, is a step-by-step guide that explains how to transform fear and anxiety into powerful allies, messengers, and healing catalysts that lead to greater confidence, self-worth, and success. Dr. Schaub's research has been published in some of the most prestigious medical and science journals. According to Dr. Schaub, once our mind, body, and spirit are in alignment, everything is possible. Welcome, Dr. Schaub. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be on your show.
Doctor, as I said in the introduction, more than 50 million people have been diagnosed with anxiety disorders, and I'm going to assume that most of those people are medicated in some form, and your work strives to reach the subconscious root causes of fear and anxiety. Why is that so important?
Well, I think when we really look into our fears, and I believe the number is actually much higher than 50 million. These are only the people that have been diagnosed, but I think we all know people that are struggling with fear and anxiety. And when we are, in that state of anxiety, we realize that this is not a conscious intellectual process. Often the fear and anxiety comes at the most inopportune moments, just when you're about to give a talk or you're on a date, and then you only think about that you actually have nothing to say and nothing interesting to share. I mean, all those thoughts and feelings of anxiety, they don't necessarily intellectually make sense. So where do they come from? Well, where they come from is really the deeper part of our mind, the deeper part of our consciousness, and that's the subconscious mind. And that's really a new approach, because I think it's very important that we are not just covering up the symptom with medication, but that we actually understanding what's underneath all of this and what's the reason why we have fear and anxiety in the first place. And in order to do that, we have to work with the subconscious mind.
Doctor, we're using the word anxiety, and we use it every day in language. What does it actually mean? What does anxiety mean, and what does it mean to experience these anxious feelings?
Well, I think the anxiety is a very natural emotion. I mean, you don't want to necessarily have no anxiety, just like you don't want to have not an ability to have pain. If you couldn't have pain, you would hurt yourself all the time because you wouldn't have this warning system. And anxiety is something that has been developed and remained as a part of us since, we have been in the Stone Ages or before. So it's something that is certainly a natural response. But in our society, what the problem is that we are anxious for no reason. We are anxious because of the what-if reality that we are imagining. And then our body basically responds to the stress and anxiety as if we have to right now go through a flight and a fight state. And so we are constantly putting our body in stress mode. And, we know how that feels. The heart is racing, the breathing is faster. As a consequence, many people develop high blood pressure, chronic pain. I mean, stress-related illnesses, and stress is a form of anxiety, is one of the highest, morbidity rates, or one of the highest killers in the United States. And we have to be really aware of, is the level of anxiety we have right now really appropriate for what's going on in our life, or is anxiety out of control? And we have to find a way to get back in control.
When I was doing research for this interview, I found it very interesting, the analogy, and you just made it, that physical pain, we recognize that as a warning sign that something's going on in the body. And yet when we have these feelings of anxiety, we feel that we need to immediately medicate it and get rid of it rather than trying to figure out what that's telling us and then work on that cause. So how can we learn to interpret these warning signs?
Well, that's a really excellent question, and I think that's a very important point, that we see the fear and anxiety as messengers that need to be looked at and addressed. Now, the natural response when we have fear and anxiety is that we are looking outside of us. We are looking at maybe the people that scare us, the boss that has frowned at you in the hallway, or we are looking at the stock market, or we're looking at, the world state of affairs, and all those kind of things we cannot control. They seem to make us anxious. And we don't turn the look inside and ask ourselves, why do I respond to this way? What's really going on a deeper level that makes me so insecure and so afraid that I cannot deal with whatever circumstances life will bring to me? And what I find in my research and my work with thousands of clients, that there are three main root causes on a subconscious level that make a person more susceptible to anxiety. And when you address these three root causes, it's almost like as if you have a clean slate. It's almost like as if you all of a sudden have pushed the reboot button, and you will not have no anxiety ever again. As I said, it's an important part of our system, but you will respond in complete appropriate ways. The anxiety will no longer control you. You will be able to have the sensation of the emotion and then know exactly what to do, and the emotion will disappear instantaneously.
Doctor, what are these three root causes, and what does each represent?
Well, one root cause is the emotional baggage that, we all have heard from, and we certainly have probably all some, baggage that we are carrying with us through time. Now, the problem is with anxiety that it's an emotion that we don't necessarily want to show to others. Anger is much easier expressed. It's much more acceptable than anxiety. So most of us are stuffing the anxiety inside. And, you have to imagine your mind, especially the subconscious, is like a storage place. But at some point, you have so much anxiety stored inside that you're like a pressure cooker ready to explode. And if, any other additional situation happens that causes you anxiety, you're responding much more dramatic and much more fast than if that inner storage system is emptied. And there are ways that allow you to learn from the past emotions, those events that you associate with anxiety that repeated themselves in patterns over and over again, that you can learn from them and release those anxiety patterns through decades within a matter of an hour. It's very, very powerful how the subconscious mind can learn and extrapolate and understand certain situations as simply situations, and we know this from anxiety, that have been repeating themselves, and if you resolve one or two of them, the subconscious can automatically also apply those insights to those other events and literally release, as I said, decades of emotional baggage. The second root cause on the subconscious level is the inner conflict that often people experience when they're anxious. The conflict between a side that feels rather confident or that feels positive and wants to be successful, and then there is this other side that holds you back, the side that says, you can't do this, or who do you think you are, or, you will fail. So people that are anxious often feel that they have been for all their lives in the middle of a tug of war, and they never felt really congruent. They always felt somehow fragmented with that inner battle, and there are very powerful ways to understand both sides of that conflict and bring finally a sense of congruency and wholeness so that you can actually feel yourself and not basically as a person who either feels, ambitious and confident and then right away insecure and anxious again. And then the third one are those limiting core beliefs that we all heard from and we all heard about and we unfortunately, most of us don't know how to resolve them and to replace them. And limiting core beliefs are kind of the law of your personal universe. So if you have a limiting core belief such as I'm not good enough or the world is not a safe place, you will look through the filters of this belief at the world and at yourself. And no matter what externally happens, no matter how successful you are, you will still believe that you're not good enough and that you're not safe. And that's the reality that you are internally experiencing. So by changing limiting core beliefs, your world and your perspective on yourself can dramatically improve and you can truly feel empowered.
Doctor, at this point, we're going to take a break for this week's Good Life Tips. Stay with us for information to help you make the positive life changes that we talk about on the show. When we return, we'll continue our discussion about overcoming fear and anxiety. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Our guest today is Dr. Friedemann Schaub, author of the book, The Fear and Anxiety Solution. Doctor, before break, we were discussing the 3 root causes of fear and anxiety, and you were explaining about how we can recognize these causes and learn from anxiety. Once we start to recognize what's going on with us, is there a way that we can turn these emotions and enable them to catapult us to achieve wonderful things in our lives, the things that we really want to accomplish?
Absolutely. And that's the beauty about such a strong emotion as fear and anxiety. It is actually a very powerful catalyst, and from many a wake-up call that says, okay, this is actually where I need to, as I said before, turn the focus inward and ultimately find out what is my potential, who am I really? And so, when we are working on fear and anxiety, often people feel, well, I just want to get rid of it. But I think we have to go beyond just getting rid of something and really have to replace it with something much more enticing for our mind and ourselves, which is, for example, the level of confidence you gain or the level of empowerment when you have greater insights about yourself. And I think that's what fear and anxiety can help you with. This fear and anxiety solution works on 2 levels. The first level is to gain a clean slate by addressing those 3 subconscious root causes. But the second level is for you to know that once you have a clean slate and you still at some point get triggered to feel fear and anxiety, that you know how to interpret this, how to interpret the emotions. And how to interpret them has nothing to do usually with the external. It has much more to do with your response to it. And there are 3 major responses. One of them is that we easily give our power away. And that means basically that we put other people as more important than ourselves. Another one is that we are going off into the what-if reality, into the future or into the past, and are not really present in what is right now in front of us. And then the third one is that we are often overdoing and not really taking care of ourselves and our balance and our needs. And so what the anxiety does, it really just tells you you have probably on some level ignored one of those 3 important parts of you, your power, your inner balance, or being present in the moment. And if you know this, you can go, and the book provides you with a checklist. You can go through the checklist and find out, what did I do actually to cause the anxiety? What is this little warning lamp of anxiety telling me about myself? You can make the adjustments, and the anxiety disappears.
You just described my life.
Well, and I think most people live like this. Unfortunately, I definitely was exactly in the same shoes, working in a cardiology department, high stress, running around all day, trying to somehow overcome my stress and anxiety by being in control of these patients and my life in general. But the more I tried to micromanage, the more out of control I felt. And the problem is I haven't really addressed what really made me out of control, which was, these points I just mentioned. I just tried to somehow control the external world, and that's where we have to change our minds to really make a transformative change.
And I think that by reshaping the way we view anxiety into more of a positive and using it as a catalyst to fuel us, I think we would perhaps not be so ready to medicate. Because it seems to me that by taking care of that at that level, by taking these drugs, and don't get me, there are some people that definitely need medication, but in general, I think we're really shortchanging ourselves by just going through life numb and not addressing what's happening and never really reaching our fullest potential.
I completely agree. And, medication, as you said, is in some cases very important. Many of my clients, when they start working with me, are on medication, but the vast majority, after they go through this process, either in individual sessions, but also through the book, can be off medication because they have learned to identify and also interpret what actually the fear and anxiety is trying to tell them. See, I compare it often not only to the pain we talked at the beginning, but also, let's say you feel dizzy. Let's say there is something, you feel spinning, and you cannot stop the earth from spinning, from turning. So you would have to say, well, if something is spinning, it's not the fault that the earth is turning. It's actually something internally, my balance system, my inner ear, you name it. But when it's anxiety, we have this tendency just to go on, about it in the wrong way, making anxiety as a flaw, making anxiety as something that is a weakness that we shouldn't have, rather than paying attention to the important messages and interpreting them correctly.
Doctor, before we run out of time, one of the points that you had mentioned earlier was about negative self-talk, and I think that this is a real problem for so many of us. We have those voices that readily tell us what we can't do and why we can't, and that's what always pops into our mind. So are there some strategies that you can offer our listeners to eliminate negative self-talk?
Yeah, I think negative self-talk, there's a whole chapter actually devoted to this topic. Negative self-talk is something that, once again, we are not consciously choosing. It's more like these thoughts are bubbling up from somewhere inside. And we have to understand what inside of us creates those thoughts. What part of the subconscious is thinking so scared or so critical, and what's the purpose of that? And when you really go back in your past and you listen to the thoughts that you have heard or that you have had already when you were, in your childhood, often you realize that, well, the criticism is something that I actually picked up maybe from a very strict parent or from a teacher, or this anxiety is something that exactly, my mother always had. So very much, many of those thoughts are simply repeating themselves. They're like tapes that are running on a subconscious level after we have picked them up early on in our lives. And, maybe they are now in a different context, but the gist of it is still, this is learned behavior that the subconscious at some point picked up. So what you can do is, first of all, write down your negative thoughts. Just have a look at it and ask yourself, is that thought really true? And does this thought really serve me? So that kind of gives you already a little reality check, because most of the thoughts, you don't know if they are true, and they certainly don't serve you to have them when they're negative. And then you are writing down 3 positive, counterbalancing thoughts that are redirecting your mind, your subconscious, towards actually the possibilities, or maybe what's more real than what you have been looking at. Now, the key here is not that you just do this internal debate here, or that you're feeling like, this is just a mental exercise. The key here is that you're imagining that you're talking to a part of you that is still stuck in the past, a part that is still somewhat on the level of a child. And if you are, I tell even clients that they should put out a photo of themselves when they were maybe 8 or 9 years old, and they would talk to themselves, that 8 or 9 year old with the 3 positive thoughts and add this compassion and reassurance and this level of comfort to those positive thoughts, I guarantee you that your negative thoughts will decrease simply because your subconscious finally will get addressed, it will get redirected, and you actually are comforting that part of you that always felt somehow either not good enough or not safe.
Doctor, where can our listeners go to get more information about you and your work?
Well, visit our website, thefearandanxietysolution.com, in one word. Another website that I have that focuses also on the inner healing work that I'm doing is called cellularwisdom.com. In one word, cellularwisdom.com.
And as always, you can visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on our site, read the digital magazine, sign up for our mailing list, take part in the book club, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Doctor, thank you so much for spending time with us today. You have provided some wonderful strategies that can help us view anxiety in a more positive light and hopefully enable us to address the root causes of anxious feelings and use it to propel us to really live the life of our dreams. So if we could just take some of these strategies and implement them immediately, I do believe that we will see major changes in our lives.
Absolutely. I really believe that we all have the potential inside. We just have to know how to unlock it.
So thank you again for being here, and I would love to have you come back. We haven't even touched the surface of this topic.
Wonderful. I would very much love that.
This is Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.